Mom, do you really like the $5,000 she gives you? The room went quiet. The flowers on the table were fresh. The food smelled warm and sweet. Everyone was smiling because it was Mother's Day. But the moment those words left my son's mouth, something broke inside me. I looked at him slowly. He was sitting across from me, wearing a clean shirt, a gold watch, and the calm face of a man who had never worried about money a day in his life. A millionaire. My son. The same boy I once carried on my back when I could not afford a stroller. Before I tell you what I said next, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more emotional and powerful stories like this one. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages. Now listen carefully. His wife sat beside him, smiling softly, her hand resting on his arm. The envelope was still on the table in front of me. White. Neat. Heavy. $5,000. I had not opened it yet. I asked you something, my son said again, laughing lightly. Do you really like it? Everyone was watching me now. I could feel their eyes. Waiting. Judging. I picked up the envelope and turned it over in my hands. Then I looked straight at my son and said quietly, "Do you really want the truth?" His smile faded just a little. That was when I knew this Mother's Day was not going to end the way anyone expected. But before I tell you what I said next, let me take you back. Back to how we got here. Back to the years before the money, before the gifts, before my son forgot what it meant to be poor. Because this moment did not come from nowhere. And what I said next would change everything between us. Before the money, before the big house and the shiny cars, life was very different. I raised my son alone for many years. His father left when he was still small, and from that day on, it was just the two of us. I worked long hours. Some days I cleaned houses. Other days I sold food at the roadside. At night, when my body was tired, I still sat beside him to help with homework. There were times we had no electricity. There were times dinner was just rice and salt. But I never let him sleep hungry. I remember one night very clearly. He was about 10 years old. Rain was falling hard on our roof, and water was leaking into the room. He looked at me and asked, "Mom, are we poor?" I smiled and touched his head. "No," I said. "We are just building." He believed me. Years passed. He was smart. Very smart. He studied hard and got a scholarship. Then another one. Then a good job. When his business finally took off, people started calling him successful. Then rich. Then millionaire. I was proud of him. Very proud. But something changed along the way. He stopped calling every day. Then every week. Then only when he needed advice. When he married, I tried my best to welcome his wife. I cooked. I smiled. I stayed quiet when I felt pushed aside. I told myself, this is normal. Children grow. On my birthdays, I got cards. On holidays, short messages. And on Mother's Day, envelopes. Always envelopes. The first year, it was $1,000. I cried when I got home. Not because of the money, but because I thought it meant he remembered. The next year, it was $3,000. This year, $5,000. He always gave it with a smile. Like he was doing something very big. And I always said, "Thank you." But what he never asked was how I felt. That Mother's Day afternoon, as we sat around the table, he leaned back in his chair like a man who had done his duty. "You don't have to worry about money anymore," he said proudly. "We've got you covered." I nodded. But inside, my heart felt heavy. His wife added softly, "Not every mother gets this kind of gift." I smiled again. But my hands were shaking. Because they didn't know something. They didn't know that for weeks. I had been thinking about what I would say if he ever asked me that question. And now he had. "Do you really like the $5,000? The room was still quiet. My son was waiting. His wife was watching my face closely. I looked down at the envelope one more time. Then I slowly pushed it back toward him across the table. And I said something no one there was ready to hear. Something that made his wife sit up straight. And made my son's face change completely. I don't need it. The words came out softer than I expected, but they landed hard. My son blinked. What? I said. I repeated a little louder now. I don't need the money. His wife laughed nervously. Oh, Mom, you don't have to pretend. It's a blessing. I shook my head slowly. I'm not pretending. The smile on my son's face disappeared completely. What do you mean you don't need it? He asked. It's $5,000. I looked around the table. At the clean plates. The expensive food. The quiet room where no one ever raised their voice. You asked me if I like it, I said. I'm answering you honestly. He leaned forward. So you don't like it? I took a deep breath. I like that you remember me, I said. But I don't like what this has replaced. The room felt tense now. His wife crossed her arms. Replaced what? I looked at her, then back at my son. Time, I said. Care. Respect. My son frowned. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked gently. When was the last time you sat with me without checking your phone? He opened his mouth, then closed it. When was the last time you asked how my body feels when I wake up? I continued. Or if I get lonely at night. His wife shifted in her seat. You're being dramatic. I smiled sadly. I used to think so too. My son picked up the envelope and pushed it back toward me again. Mom, this is how I help. I work hard. I don't have time like before. I nodded. I understand working hard. I worked hard my whole life. He sighed. Then what's the problem? The problem, I said slowly, is that you think money is the same as love. Silence. Heavy silence. His wife looked at him, then at me. Are you saying we don't love you? I shook my head. I'm saying you don't see me. My son laughed once, sharp and uncomfortable. This is ridiculous. People would be grateful. I am grateful, I replied. But gratitude doesn't mean silence. He stood up suddenly. So what do you want from me? I looked up at him. I want my son, I said. That stopped him. The room felt smaller. Closer. His wife spoke quickly. He provides. That's what matters. I turned to her. When he was 5 and sick with fever, I stayed up all night holding him. Was that providing? She didn't answer. When he was 15 and cried because he felt different, I listened for hours. Was that providing? I asked. My son's eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't raise you to measure love in numbers, I said softly. I raised you to feel it. He sat back down slowly. I didn't know you felt this way, he said. That's because you never asked, I replied. He rubbed his face with his hands. So what now? I looked at the envelope one last time. Now, I said, you tell me if you really wanted to give me a gift, or just feel good about yourself. His wife inhaled sharply. Excuse me, she said. I met her eyes. This question wasn't about money, I said. It was about your conscience. My son looked between us, confused and shaken. And that was when his wife said something that changed the room completely. Well, she said slowly, maybe if you were more appreciative, this wouldn't be awkward. My heart sank. Because I realized then, this conversation was far from over. And the next thing I would say would draw a line that could not be erased. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Maybe if you were more appreciative, this wouldn't be awkward. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. I looked at her for a long moment. She was young, well-dressed, confident. She had never known hunger. never known what it meant to choose between food and schoolbooks. She had married into comfort and learned to speak from that place. I turned back to my son. "Did you hear what she just said?" I asked calmly. He shifted in his chair. "She didn't mean it like that." "She meant exactly what she said," I replied. His wife leaned forward. "We do a lot for you," she said. "Not everyone gets this kind of support." I nodded slowly. "You're right. Not everyone does." Then I added, "And not every mother raised her child from nothing." My son looked up quickly. "That's not fair," he said. "I know," I replied. "Life rarely is." The room was quiet again. No one touched their food. "I was appreciative when I walked miles to work so you could eat," I continued. "I was appreciative when I wore the same shoes for years so you could have new ones. I was appreciative when I went to bed hungry and told you I wasn't." His wife looked uncomfortable now. "But appreciation," I said gently, "is not silence. And it is not obedience." My son exhaled sharply. "So what are you saying? That we're bad people?" "I'm saying," I replied, "that somewhere along the way, you started confusing generosity with superiority." That word hit hard. "Superiority," his wife repeated. "Yes," I said. "When help comes with judgment, it stops being help." She crossed her arms again. "We didn't have to give you anything." I smiled sadly. "That's true. And I never asked you to." My son looked torn. "Mom, we're trying." "I believe you," I said. "But trying without listening still hurts." He stared at the table. "I thought the money showed you I care." "It shows effort," I replied. "But care is presence." The room stayed quiet for a long time. Then his wife stood up. "I think this conversation has gone too far." I nodded. "So do I." She picked up her purse. "We invited you to celebrate, not to be judged." I stood up slowly too. "And I came to be a mother, not a charity case." My son looked up sharply. "Mom, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Tell the truth." He swallowed. "You're embarrassing us." That word cut deeper than I expected. "I carried you for 9 months," I said softly. "I cleaned you, fed you, protected you. And today, telling you how I feel is embarrassing." He didn't answer. I picked up my coat. "I'm going home," I said. His wife looked relieved. My son looked scared. As I walked toward the door, he finally spoke. "Wait," he said. "Is this really about the money?" I stopped and turned back. "No," I said. "This is about the day you stopped seeing me as your mother, and started seeing me as a responsibility." His face changed. "Because if that's how you see me," I continued, "then this envelope was never a gift." Silence filled the room one last time. I opened the door. But before I stepped out, I said something that made my son stand up fast. "Next time you ask me if I like your money," I said quietly, "be ready to hear what it cost me to raise you." And with that I walked out, leaving behind a table full of food, and a family that had just been forced to look at itself. The drive home felt longer than usual. The streets were quiet, but my mind was loud. Every word from that table replayed itself again and again. "You're embarrassing us." I had heard many painful things in my life, but those words, coming from my own son, sat heavy on my chest. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I sat on the couch in the dark and listened to the sound of the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like a reminder of how much time had passed between us. My phone buzzed. I didn't look at it. It buzzed again. Then again. Finally, I picked it up. It was my son. I let it ring. A message came in instead. "Mom, please call me." I placed the phone face down on the table. For the first time in years, I chose silence. Not to punish him. but to protect myself. That night, I slept badly. I dreamed of old days. Of small hands holding mine. Of his voice calling Mom without fear, without pride, without distance. In the morning, my phone was full of messages. From him. From her. Some were short. Some were long. Some sounded sorry. Others sounded annoyed. One message from his wife stood out. We didn't mean to disrespect you. But you have to understand our position too. I read it twice. Then I laughed softly. Their position. As if love had levels. As if motherhood came with conditions. I made tea and sat by the window, watching people walk past my house. Mothers. Children. Families moving together, talking, laughing. I wondered if my son was thinking about me the same way I was thinking about him. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it slowly. It was my son. He looked tired. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept much either. He stood there without speaking for a moment, like he wasn't sure he was welcome. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside. He walked in and looked around, like he hadn't been here in a long time. He sat on the edge of the chair, not relaxing, not comfortable. I messed up, he said. I didn't answer right away. I didn't mean to hurt you, he continued. I thought I was doing the right thing. I sat across from him. By asking me if I like your money? He flinched. When I said that, he admitted, I thought I was being generous. And were you? I asked. He hesitated. I don't know anymore. That was honest. I didn't realize how far we drifted, he said. I thought providing was enough. It's never enough on its own, I replied. He nodded slowly. She thinks you hate her. I shook my head. I don't hate her. But I won't shrink myself to make her comfortable. He looked down. She doesn't understand your life. That's because she's never asked, I said. He swallowed. I want to fix this. I studied his face. Fixing doesn't mean writing another check, I said. It means changing how you see me. He looked up. Then tell me how. I leaned back in my chair. Start by visiting without an envelope, I said. Start by calling without a reason. Start by remembering that before you were rich, you were loved. Tears filled his eyes. I forgot, he whispered. Yes, I said softly. You did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the envelope. I brought it, he said. But I don't know if I should give it to you. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I said something that made his hand freeze mid-air. Keep it, I said. For now. His eyes widened. Why? Because the next gift I accept from you, I continued, will tell me whether you heard me, or just felt guilty. He slowly put the envelope back into his pocket. We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked, Can I come back tomorrow? I nodded. Yes. But as he stood up to leave, I added, Just know this, what happens next will decide the kind of relationship we have from here on. He paused at the door. I understand, he said. But as he left, I wasn't sure he truly did. Because understanding a mother's heart is harder than writing any check. The next day, he came back without the envelope. That alone told me he had been thinking. He stood at the door holding nothing but his phone and a small bag of fruit. No flowers. No card. No money. Just him. I brought oranges, he said awkwardly. You used to like them. I smiled a little. I still do. He stepped inside, looking around again like he was seeing my home for the first time. The old couch. The worn rug. The small kitchen where I had cooked 1,000 meals with tired hands. You live very simply, he said quietly. I always have, I replied. He nodded and sat down. This time, he leaned back instead of sitting on the edge. It was a small change, but I noticed it. I told her I was coming alone, he said. And I asked. She wasn't happy, he admitted. She thinks you're turning me against her. I stirred my tea slowly. I'm not turning you against anyone. I'm turning you toward yourself. He sighed. She doesn't see it that way. That's not my job, I said gently. Your marriage is yours. Your conscience is yours too. He looked at me for a long moment. Do you think I've become a bad son? The question surprised me. I didn't answer right away. I think, I said carefully, you became a busy man who forgot where he came from. He nodded slowly. That sounds right. We talked for a while. About small things. His work. My health. The weather. It felt strange at first, like two people learning how to speak again after a long silence. Then he asked, do you really not need the money? I met his eyes. I need security, I said. I need dignity. I need to know I matter even when I'm not useful. He swallowed. I thought giving you money showed respect. It shows ability, I replied. Respect is how you speak to me. How you listen. How you defend me when someone else doesn't. He looked down at his hands. She crossed a line, he admitted. With what she said. Yes, I said. And so did you when you stayed quiet. He closed his eyes briefly. I didn't know how to choose between you. I leaned forward. A good choice doesn't ask you to abandon your mother or your wife. It asks you to be honest with both. He nodded. I need to talk to her, he said. Yes, I agreed. And not as a rich man. As a son. He stood up to leave later that afternoon, calmer than before. At the door, he hesitated. Will you come over again? For dinner. Just us. I smiled. I'll think about it. He smiled back, hopeful. But after he left, my phone buzzed. A message. From her. We need to set boundaries. This cannot continue. I stared at the screen for a long time. Because I knew what that message really meant. She wasn't ready to listen. And the next conversation would not be quiet. It would be the one that decided whether my son truly understood what I had tried to teach him. Or whether Mother's Day was only the beginning of a much deeper break. I did not reply to her message right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew whatever I said would change everything. The words we need to set boundaries were not about peace. They were about control. About drawing lines that only went one way. That evening, my son called again. She's upset, he said carefully. I know, I replied. She messaged me. He was quiet for a moment. She feels like you're pulling me away from her. I sighed. And do you feel pulled? No, he said quickly. Then slower. I feel awake. That word stayed with me. Awake. Mom, he continued. She wants us all to talk. Together. I leaned back in my chair. Does she want to talk, or does she want to correct me? He didn't answer right away. I think she wants things to go back to normal, he finally said. I closed my eyes. Normal for who? He exhaled. Can you come tomorrow? Just listen. I thought about the table. The envelope. The question that started all of this. I'll come, I said. But I won't be small. The next evening, I stood in front of their door again. This time, I was not nervous. She opened the door and smiled, but it was tight. Practiced. Come in, she said. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No music. No TV. Just tension sitting in every corner. We sat down across from each other. My son in the middle, like a bridge trying not to crack. She spoke first. I think we all got emotional on Mother's Day, she said. Things were misunderstood. I nodded. Some things were finally understood. Her smile faded. We respect you, she continued. But we also have our own life now. I never asked to live your life, I replied. only to be treated with kindness. She folded her hands. Kindness goes both ways. Yes, I said. And silence is not kindness. My son shifted. Let's slow down. She turned to him. I feel like I'm being judged for trying to do the right thing. I looked at her calmly. Doing the right thing doesn't hurt when it's done with love. She stiffened. So now I'm unloving? I'm saying, I replied, that love doesn't ask a mother to feel grateful for being tolerated. The room went quiet. My son swallowed. She felt embarrassed, he said softly. In front of everyone. I turned to him. And I felt erased. In front of everyone. That landed hard. She stood up suddenly. This is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into an attack. I remained seated. No. I turn it into a conversation. She shook her head. You don't understand what it's like to build something with someone and feel like an outsider is always watching. I stood up slowly. Outsider. I repeated. She froze. My son looked at her sharply. Did you just call my mother an outsider? She opened her mouth. Closed it. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. But that's what you said, I replied. The room felt heavy. I carried him, I continued. I fed him. I protected him when there was nothing. If that makes me an outsider, then something is very wrong. She looked at my son, searching for support. He didn't give it. I think, he said slowly, we've been unfair. Her eyes widened. To who? To her, he said. And I let it happen. That was the moment. The moment I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me. Fear of losing control. She grabbed her purse. I can't do this right now. She walked toward the bedroom and shut the door. The house fell silent. My son sat down heavily. I didn't expect that, he said. I placed a hand on his arm. Truth rarely arrives gently. He looked up at me. I don't want to lose my family. You won't, I said. But you may have to redefine it. As I walked out that night, I felt something strange. Not victory. Not sadness. Relief. Because for the first time, my son had chosen honesty over comfort. But I also knew something else. That door she closed. It wasn't just to the bedroom. It was to a choice she would have to make soon. And when she did, someone was going to walk away forever. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. My son did not call like before. He sent short messages instead. I'm okay. Just need time. She's calming down. We'll talk soon. I read them all. I answered none. Not because I was angry, but because I had learned something important. When people are finally forced to think, silence can be kinder than words. On the fourth day, he came to my house again. This time, his shoulders were heavy. His eyes looked older. He sat down without saying anything and stared at the floor for a long moment. She packed a bag, he said finally. I didn't ask who. I already knew. She said she needed space, he continued. She went to stay with a friend. I nodded slowly. And how do you feel? He rubbed his hands together. Lost. That word carried weight. I love her, he said. But I don't like who I become when I'm silent. I looked at him carefully. Silence always chooses a side. He nodded. I see that now. We sat quietly for a while. Then he asked, did I hurt you more than I know? Yes, I answered honestly. He closed his eyes. I thought money fixed things. It covers things, I said. But it doesn't heal them. He took a deep breath. She says you don't respect our marriage. I tilted my head. Respect doesn't mean disappearing. She thinks you're trying to take me back, he said quietly. I smiled sadly. I never left you. You just walked ahead without looking back. That made his eyes fill with tears. I don't want to choose between you, he said. I'm not asking you to, I replied. I'm asking you to choose who you are. He wiped his face. She wants us to move. Far away. I looked at him. And she says distance will fix this. I shook my head. Distance only hides problems. It doesn't solve them. He leaned back in the chair, exhausted. She says if I don't set firm boundaries, she doesn't know if she can stay married to me. That sentence hung in the air. I felt it then. The shift. This was no longer about Mother's Day. This was about power. Do you think, he asked softly, that I've been weak? I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the man he became. I think you've been afraid of disappointing the wrong person, I said. He nodded slowly. That evening, after he left, my phone rang. It was her. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But I did. Hello, I said calmly. There was a pause on the other end. I didn't mean to call, she said. But I did anyway. I'm listening, I replied. She sighed. I feel like I'm losing my husband. You're not losing him, I said. You're meeting him. She was quiet. I didn't grow up like you, she said suddenly. I didn't have much either. I promised myself I'd never feel small again. I understood more than she knew. But making others feel small won't make you feel big, I replied. She sniffed. He's changing. Yes, I said. He's remembering. Her voice hardened. So what do you want from me? I thought carefully. I want peace, I said. Not control. Not apology. Peace. She laughed bitterly. Peace sounds like losing. Only if winning means someone else must lose, I replied. There was a long silence. Then she said something that made my heart tighten. If he chooses you, I don't know if I can stay. I closed my eyes. Then, I said softly, you're asking him to choose between love and fear. She didn't answer. The call ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. Because I knew now, without any doubt, the next conversation would not happen at a table. It would happen inside my son's heart. And whatever choice he made would change all of our lives forever. He came back late that night. I knew it was him before I opened the door. A mother always knows the sound of her child's steps, no matter how old he gets. They were slow, heavy. Like each one carried a question he didn't know how to answer. When I opened the door, he didn't speak right away. He just stood there. Can I stay for a bit? He asked quietly. Yes, I said, stepping aside. He walked in and sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. The room felt small again, like it used to when he was young and scared of storms. She gave me an ultimatum, he said. I sat across from him but didn't interrupt. She said if I don't set clear boundaries with you, she doesn't know if she can stay married to me. There it was. The thing we had all been circling. I folded my hands. And what do you think? He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. I think I never realized how much I've been hiding. Hiding from what? I asked. From conflict, he replied. From choosing. From myself. He leaned back and closed his eyes. I thought being successful meant keeping everyone comfortable. And now? I asked. Now I see that comfort built on silence is a lie. We sat quietly for a moment. Then he said, she says you don't respect her. I nodded slowly. Respect doesn't mean agreeing with everything someone says. She feels judged, he continued. I felt erased, I replied gently. He opened his eyes and looked at me. I should have spoken up that day. Yes, I said. But you can still speak now. He rubbed his face. I'm afraid. Of what? I asked. Of losing her, he said. And of losing you. I leaned forward. You will not lose me for telling the truth. He swallowed hard. But I might lose her. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, sometimes people leave when they can no longer control the story. That hit him. She says you're trying to pull me back into the past, he said. I'm trying to remind you of it, I replied. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. I went back to the house, he said. She wasn't there. It felt empty. Empty how? I asked. Like something important was missing, he said. And it wasn't the furniture. He looked up at me, eyes wet. I don't want to be the kind of man who measures love in money, he said. But I don't know how to undo years of doing exactly that. You don't undo it all at once, I said. You start with one honest choice. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the dark. She's waiting for my answer, he said. Tonight. I felt my chest tighten. What answer? I asked, even though I already knew. Whether I'll set the boundaries she wants, he said. Or whether I'll keep letting you speak. I stood up too and joined him by the window. Whatever you choose, I said softly, choose it because it's right, not because you're afraid. He turned to me. If I choose truth, things will break. Yes, I said. But they may also finally become real. His phone buzzed in his hand. He looked at the screen. Didn't answer. It buzzed again. He exhaled slowly. She says this is my last chance. I placed my hand on his arm. You don't owe me a choice, I said. You owe yourself one. He nodded. Then he walked toward the door. I need to go, he said. I followed him to the doorway. Before he stepped outside, he turned back and asked the question I had been dreading. If I lose my marriage tonight, he said, will you think it's because of you? I looked at him and answered without hesitation. No, I said. I'll think it's because the truth finally asked for a place to stand. He nodded once. Then he left. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Because I knew that somewhere right now, my son was about to speak words that could not be taken back. And by the time the sun rose, one relationship would be forever changed. The only question left was which one. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, fully dressed, the lamp still on, listening to every small sound outside. A car passing. A door closing somewhere down the street. My phone lying face up beside me, silent. Too silent. I kept thinking about the question he asked me before he left. If I lose my marriage tonight. A mother's heart is a fragile thing. Strong enough to survive hunger, fear, and years of sacrifice, but weak when it comes to the pain of her child. I told myself again and again that whatever happened next was not my doing. It was the truth doing its work. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. One message. From him. We're talking. Nothing else. I stared at those two words until my eyes burned. I imagined them sitting across from each other. Her arms crossed. His hands open. Her voice sharp with fear. His voice steady for the first time in a long while. I imagined him finally saying the things he had swallowed for years. Don't speak to my mother that way. Money doesn't replace respect. Silence is not peace. I imagined her hearing those words and realizing something had shifted. Not because of me. Because of him. Another hour passed. Then another. Still nothing. At some point, I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, remembering a night long ago when he was a child with a fever. I had sat just like this, watching his chest rise and fall, afraid of what might happen if I closed my eyes. Some fears never leave you. Just before dawn, my phone rang. Not a message. A call. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I answered immediately. Mom, he said. His voice sounded different. Not broken. Not angry. Clear. I'm here, I replied. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. I told her everything, he said. Not just about you. About me. About how I've been hiding behind money and silence. I closed my eyes. And? I asked softly. She cried, he said. She said she felt attacked. She said she felt second. I said nothing. I told her, he continued, that love isn't a competition, and that if loving my mother honestly threatens our marriage, then something is already wrong. My chest tightened. She asked me to choose, he said quietly. I held my breath. And I told her, he paused, that I choose truth. Tears spilled down my face. She didn't take it well, he added. She said she needs time. She left. I pressed my hand to my mouth. I don't know what this means yet, he said. I don't know if she'll come back. Or if things can be fixed. I swallowed hard. How do you feel? Another pause. Scared, he admitted. But lighter. That was the word I was waiting for. Lighter. I'm proud of you, I said. I didn't do it for praise, he replied. I did it because I couldn't keep living split in two. We stayed on the phone for a while, not saying much. Just breathing. Just existing in the same moment again. Before we hung up, he said, I'm coming by later today. There's something else we need to talk about. My heart skipped. What is it? He hesitated. It's about what happens next, he said. And a decision I haven't told anyone yet. The call ended. I sat there in the quiet morning light, my emotions tangled, relief, fear, hope, and a deep, aching love. Because I knew this wasn't over. Truth had spoken. But consequences were still moving. And whatever decision my son was about to share would not just shape his marriage. It would shape the rest of our lives. He arrived just after noon. I knew it was him the moment I heard the car stop outside. Not because of the sound of the engine, but because my chest tightened the same way it always had when he was coming home from school as a child. Some feelings never change, no matter how old your children get. He knocked softly. I opened the door and stepped aside. He looked tired, but different. Straighter. Like someone who had finally put something heavy down, even if their arms still ached from carrying it too long. We sat at the small table in my kitchen. The same table where I once helped him practice spelling words. The same table where I counted coins to see if we could afford meat that week. I didn't sleep much, he said. Neither did I replied. He nodded slowly. She hasn't called. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask where she was. That wasn't the part that mattered right now. You said there was something else you wanted to talk about, I said gently. He took a deep breath. I've been thinking about the question you asked me, he said. About whether I gave you money because I wanted to give, or because I wanted to feel good about myself. I stayed quiet. I realized something, he continued. I've been using money like a shield. Every time I felt uncomfortable, every time I felt guilty, I reached for my wallet instead of my heart. That honesty surprised even him. I don't want to do that anymore, he said. I looked at him carefully. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, I want to rebuild our relationship properly. Not with gifts. With time. My throat tightened. I want to come by every week, he continued. Not to drop something off, but to sit, to talk, to listen. I nodded. And I want you to tell me when I mess up, he added. Even if it makes me uncomfortable. I smiled sadly. It will. I know, he said. But I don't want comfort anymore. I want truth. We sat quietly for a moment. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. I'm thinking about selling the big house. I looked up sharply. Why? Because it doesn't feel like home, he replied. It feels like a place where I hide. That scared me. Not because of the house, but because of what it meant. What about your marriage? I asked carefully. He looked down at his hands. I don't know yet. I nodded. That's honest. She says she needs space, he continued. But she also said something last night that I can't stop thinking about. What did she say? I asked. She said, if you keep choosing your mother, there won't be room for me. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. And what did you say? I asked. I said, he replied quietly, that love isn't a room with limited space. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You did well, I said. He swallowed hard. I don't know if she'll ever see it that way. That's her journey, I replied. Not yours. He leaned back in his chair. I've spent years trying to be the man everyone expects. The successful one. The generous one. The easy one. And now? I asked. Now I want to be the honest one, he said. That word again. Honest. The afternoon light moved slowly across the room as we talked. About small things. About big things. About memories we hadn't touched in years. Before he left, he stood by the door and hesitated. There's something else, he said. I waited. She asked me not to come here today, he admitted. She said it would prove where my loyalty really is. I felt my heart sink. And? I asked. I came anyway, he said. I nodded slowly. As he stepped outside, he turned back and said something that made my breath catch. I don't know how this ends, he said. But I know I can't go back to who I was. I watched him walk to his car. And as the door closed behind him, I realized something important. This story was no longer just about a Mother's Day question. It was about a man standing at the edge of two lives. One built on comfort and control. The other built on truth and courage. And the next choice he made would not just change his future. It would decide who stayed in it. The days after that felt strange. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just exposed. My son kept his promise. He came every week. Sometimes with groceries. Sometimes with nothing at all. We talked. We argued a little. We laughed once or twice, surprised by the sound like it was something we had misplaced and suddenly found again. But the silence from his wife grew heavier. No calls. No messages. No visits. One evening, he came later than usual. His face was tight, his movements slow. She wants to meet, he said as soon as he sat down. I did not ask who. When? I asked. Tomorrow, he replied. She said it's important. I nodded. Important usually is. He rubbed his hands together. She asked if you would come too. That surprised me. Did she say why? I asked. She said, he hesitated, that if we're going to move forward, everything needs to be said out loud. I leaned back in my chair. That sounds brave, I said. Or dangerous. He gave a weak smile. I can't tell which. The next afternoon, we met at a small cafe. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. She was already there when we arrived. She looked different. Not angry. Not proud. Tired. She stood when she saw us. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. We sat down. No one spoke at first. Finally, she broke the silence. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About Mother's Day. About everything. I waited. I grew up watching my own mother be ignored, she continued. She gave everything and got nothing back. I promised myself I'd never be in that position. My son listened closely. When I saw how much he gave you, she said, looking at me, I thought, if he gives her so much, what will be left for me? I studied her face. And instead of saying that, I replied calmly, you tried to make me smaller. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. Yes. My son exhaled slowly. I was wrong, she said. About the money. About the question. About you. She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. The same one. Unopened. I don't want this to be the way we talk anymore, she said, pushing it toward me. Or the way we measure love. I did not touch it. I don't want your money, I said gently. I want peace. She nodded. So do I. My son leaned forward. Then we need to talk about boundaries, he said. Real ones. She looked at him. I know. For my mother, he continued. And for us. She swallowed. I'm trying to learn how to share space without feeling threatened. I spoke then. Space is not the problem, I said. Fear is. She looked at me. I don't want to lose my marriage. And I don't want to lose my son, I replied. But neither of us should have to disappear for that not to happen. The words settled between us. She nodded slowly. I understand. For the first time I believed she might. We stood to leave. As we walked outside, she touched my arm gently. I'm sorry, she said. Not because I was caught. But because I was cruel. I met her eyes. Apologies matter when behavior follows. She nodded. I know. That night, my son walked me to my door. Do you think this can heal? He asked. I think, I said carefully, that healing is possible when people stop trying to win. He smiled faintly. As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His face changed. What is it? I asked. He swallowed. It's my lawyer, he said. About something she filed, before she left. My heart tightened. What did she file? I asked. He looked up at me, eyes full of worry. A legal separation, he said quietly. And in that moment, I understood something painful and true. Even when truth is spoken, its consequences do not stop moving. And whatever came next would test not just love, but loyalty, courage, and the cost of finally being honest. The word separation stayed in the air long after he said it. It followed us into the house. It sat between us at the table. It echoed in every quiet moment that night. My son did not stay long. He hugged me before he left, tighter than usual, like he was afraid something might break if he let go. I didn't know she had done that, he said again, almost to himself. I believe you, I replied. After he left, I sat alone and thought about how strange life can be. How one honest conversation can pull years of hidden things into the light. How truth does not destroy, it reveals. The next morning, he came early. Earlier than usual. He looked exhausted. She filed it a week ago, he said as soon as he sat down. Before Mother's Day. That hurt more than I expected. So when she asked that question, I said slowly, she already knew what she was planning. He nodded. I think she wanted to know where I stood. I closed my eyes. And now? I asked. Now I have to respond, he said. Legally. We talked for a long time that morning. About lawyers. About timelines. About what separation really meant. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He was grieving. I feel like I failed, he admitted. As a husband. As a son. You failed no one by telling the truth, I said. You only failed the version of yourself that stayed quiet. That afternoon, he met with his lawyer. When he came back, he looked calmer. They want to divide everything, he said. Assets. Accounts. Property. I nodded. That's how these things go. He hesitated. She asked for something specific. What? I asked. She asked that I limit contact with you, he said quietly. My chest tightened. What did you say? I asked. I said no, he replied without hesitation. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I told her, he continued, that my relationship with my mother is not a bargaining chip. That mattered. More than he knew. The weeks that followed were slow and heavy. Papers were signed. Meetings were held. Conversations were replayed over and over in his mind. Some nights he came over just to sit in silence. Other nights he stayed home alone. And me. I stayed steady, not because it was easy, but because I had already survived harder things. One evening, he came with a small box. I found these, he said. Inside were old photos, school papers, a small toy car he used to sleep with when he was little. I didn't know she kept them separate, he said, like she was already packing pieces of my life away. I touched the toy car and smiled sadly. She was protecting herself, I said, even if it hurt others. He nodded. One night, after a long silence, he asked, "Do you think she ever loved me?" I answered honestly. "I think she loved you the way she knew how," I said. "But love that fears being replaced often turns into control." He looked down. "I don't want to repeat that," he said. "You won't," I replied. "Because you're aware now." Months passed. The separation became real. Friends chose sides. Some disappeared. Others showed up unexpectedly. Life rearranged itself in quiet ways. Then one afternoon, he came to my house smiling. A real smile. "I made a decision," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Another one?" He laughed softly. "Yes. This one's about me." He told me he was stepping back from work for a while. Not quitting. Just slowing down. "I don't want to keep building a life I don't have time to live," he said. I nodded. "That sounds wise." "I'm also thinking about counseling," he added. "Not to fix the marriage. To understand myself." I reached for his hand. "That's brave." He squeezed my hand. "You know, if you hadn't answered that question honestly on Mother's Day, none of this would have happened." I smiled gently. "It was never about the money," I said. He nodded. "I know." As he stood to leave that day, he paused at the door. "Mom," he said, "do you regret saying what you said?" I looked at him. The man he had become. The man he was still becoming. "No," I said. "I regret how long it took me to say it." He smiled. And as the door closed behind him, I realized something important. This story did not begin with a $5,000 envelope. It began years ago, with a boy who learned to survive. And a mother who finally chose to speak. And while the ending was still unfolding, for the first time in a long while, the truth was no longer afraid of the light. Life did not suddenly become perfect after that. It became honest. And honesty has a way of changing things slowly, quietly, but forever. The separation became official. Papers were signed. Dates were set. Some nights my son slept well. Other nights he didn't. Healing did not come in a straight line. It came in small moments, long walks, quiet talks, and choices made without fear. One afternoon, he came to my house carrying a small bag. "I brought lunch," he said. "No envelope. No money. Just food and time." We ate together at the table, laughing when the soup spilled, talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't being managed or measured. I was just his mother. Later that day, he said something I will never forget. "I used to think success meant never needing anyone," he said. "Now I think it means knowing who you can't live without." My eyes filled with tears. Weeks turned into months. He went to counseling. He learned how to listen without defending himself. How to speak without hiding behind pride. He learned that love is not proven by numbers, but by presence. As for her, she moved on in her own way. We did not become close, but we became civil, respectful, clear. And that was enough. One Sunday morning, my son came by early and knocked on my door like he used to when he was young. "Happy Mother's Day," he said softly. I froze. He smiled nervously. "I know it's not the date. But I didn't want to wait." He handed me a small box. Inside was not money. It was a framed photo. A picture of the two of us from years ago. Me tired. Him smiling. Both of us standing in front of a small house we could barely afford. On the back, he had written, "Thank you for raising me when you had nothing, and for speaking when I had everything." I held it to my chest. That was the gift. And that was the answer to the question he asked me months ago. Do I like the $5,000? No. But I love the man my son finally became. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I read every single one. Because sometimes, the greatest gift a mother can receive is not money. It's being seen.